The day California declares independence, the first thing that stops moving is not people, it's containers. A new border appears in the one place the U.S. never planned for, its busiest port complex. 40% of U.S. containerized imports hit a bottleneck in hours. Then the grid asks a question with no easy answer. Who owns the electrons crossing a new national boundary? Interstate ties become international exports, and the paperwork is slower than the physics. On paper, independence promises control: immigration, climate policy, tech, and taxes. But systems run on flows: goods, power, dollars, water. Change one, pressure builds elsewhere. Most stress hides in plumbing we never see until it fails. When the electricity market broke in 2001, small rule changes cascaded into blackouts. Independence is a bigger rule change. Ahead, ports jam, the grid splits, water rights turn legal into physical, money picks sides, and feedback loops decide who blinks first. We start with the baseline the day before the vote, what's quietly holding everything together. Then first-order breaks, second-order system effects, escalation, and the long state that follows. Watch for delays, thresholds, and accumulation. The mechanics that raise stakes without theatrics. And the payoff: who adapts, who stalls, and what California looks like when the pressure stops rising. Here is the system when things go wrong. California's twin ports move more containers than any U.S. port, feeding warehouses from Reno to Memphis. Customs clears at the dock, then cargo splits by truck and rail to national distribution nodes. One delay at customs ripples to chassis availability, driver rotations, and warehouse labor schedules. California imports and exports power hourly. Summer peaks draw from the northwest and southwest. Solar drops at dusk. Imports cover the steep evening ramp. That dependence becomes a negotiation point. Even with record renewables, the timing mismatch is structural. Water flows by treaty and compact, not just by gravity. California's claim on the Colorado predates many neighbors, but shortages triggered tiered cuts in recent years. Turn a legal dispute into a physical cutoff, and crops notice in days. Banks clear dollars through the Federal Reserve. Federal contracts fund universities, roads, and bases. Independence severs automatic flows. Every line must be rebuilt: currency, clearing, debt sharing. Research slows when compliance and funding rules reset at once. Texas versus White in 1869 called the Union indissoluble. But political deals, not courtrooms, decide real secessions. Brexit shows the mechanism: vote first, then years of paperwork while costs show up immediately. California's version would be tighter, because borders, power, and water do not wait. Now day zero, first order breaks. Ports, power, water, money. 4 levers, 1 morning. The first stamp matters more than the first speech. If you're tracking the mechanism so far, tap like, drop a comment with the first bottleneck you'd fix, and subscribe for the next scenario. With independence, the Port of LA becomes a foreign port to the U.S. overnight. Transshipment now needs federal clearance at the California-U.S. border or inland facilities. Temporary inland checkpoints add hours, then days, as staff and software lag reality. Backlogs spill into warehouses. Detention and demurrage fees stack faster than goods move. Interties used for balancing now require export licenses and tariffs. Every new step adds delay. The grid punishes delay with frequency and prices. Real effect this week: price spikes at the evening ramp and voluntary demand cuts to avoid outages. Colorado River deliveries depend on interstate and now international agreements. Existing shortage tiers collide with a new sovereignty claim. Lawyers file, but valves decide. Growers start rationing immediately to hedge against an abrupt cut. Currency choice is existential. Adopt the dollar unilaterally, peg, or float a new unit. Dollarization stabilizes banks but surrenders monetary policy. A peg needs reserves. A float invites volatility at launch. Risk premia widen instantly. Refinancing costs for firms and mortgages rise before any law is written. Flights to Phoenix and Portland become international routes needing passport checks and custom slots. Staffing a border is slow. Aviation schedules are not. Non-US talent already in California faces status limbo between two immigration regimes. Retailers push delivery risk back to suppliers. Suppliers pass costs forward to consumers. A reinforcing loop chokes volume while raising costs, until demand breaks or capacity expands. The pattern is selective scarcity, not universal shortage. Neighboring states sell elsewhere first to avoid new paperwork and risk. California accelerates storage build, but construction lags peak season by quarters, not days. Contracts don't keep lights on, commissioning dates do. Talks begin with history, end with flow rates. Low reservoirs shift leverage, hydropower losses and intake exposure force real concessions. Agriculture adapts with tighter windows and crop switching, changes that cost seasons to realize. Negotiations over federal debt share versus federal assets on California soil become the price of recognition. Offsetting assets can stabilize a credit rating if terms are transparent and enforceable. Housing feels the squeeze first, then steadies as markets see a path to clearing payments. Defense installations shift by treaty, lease, joint use, or transfer. Each base is a bargaining chip with jobs attached. Maritime security must backstop port revenue within months, not years. If the lights hold and cargo moves, confidence follows. If not, capital leaves. Under pressure, leaders choose speed over purity. Temporary dollarization, priority lanes for medical and food cargo. Green lanes cut delays but create fairness fights and lobbying. Output resumes in pockets, not evenly. Immigration becomes a lever. Talent visas granted in days to anchor high-wage sectors. A carbon price funds storage, which stabilizes evenings, which supports industry that pays the tax. Months later, the border gets faster than the first week, but never free. Inland ports bloom at edges, shifting where value-added logistics occur. Storage plus contracts smooth the ramp, at a premium that shows up on bills. The price of sovereignty slips into the line items. Trade-offs emerge. Cleaner air, pricier goods, tighter borders. Faster permits for some, slower for others. If this breakdown helps you see the moving parts, subscribe, comment your favorite mechanism we missed, and share to keep the debate smart. The failure point isn't ideology, it's synchronization. Laws change fastest. Steel changes slowest. Prices live in between and punish the gap. California has rebuilt after shocks, physical and regulatory. The pattern is the same. Diagnose mechanism, iterate, pay. Adaptation looks boring up close. New lanes, new forms, fewer surprises. From here, outcomes hinge on deals. Customs pre-clearance with the US, prolonged friction, or a regional market stitched along the coast. The fastest relief comes from harmonizing rules more than building hardware. Watch these four numbers. If they trend down, independence stabilizes. If they don't, risk compounds. Households arbitrate the final verdict by staying, spending, hiring, or not. Sovereignty is not a switch, it's a cue. Systems clear it at different speeds, and the cost is the weight. Get the mechanism right, and politics looks wise in hindsight. What scenario should we explore next? Share your ideas below. You've been watching Ifverse, where imagination meets possibility. See you in our next reality.